Now we move on to the next intriguing session of the day, which is ACP Symposium on 100 Years of Insulin Journey. And for this, I would like to invite our chairpersons, Dr. Ashok Kumar, who is Professor and Head of the Department of Medicine at Santosh Medical College, Ghaziabad, Dr. Ghanshyam Pangte, who is Professor of Medicine at Lady Hardinge Medical College, New Delhi, Dr. Pankaj Chaudhary, who is Senior Consultant at Max Super Speciality Hospital, Vaishali. And to moderate the session, I would like to invite Dr. Amit Gupta. He requires no introduction. He is presently Director of Center for Diabetes Care, Greater Noida, and member of Advisory Board of American Diabetes Association. Now I request Dr. Amit to invite our panelists and proceed with the proceedings with the third session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Payal, for the kind introduction. And at the outset, we would like to thank the ACP India chapter and our Governor, Dr. Anuj Maheshwari, for this joint and allowing us to conduct this symposium. I happen to be on the both sides as part of the organizing committee of the DID as well as the advisory council member of the ACP India chapter. I would like to invite the panelists for today, for Dr. Narsingh Verma. Dr. Narsingh Verma is president of the Uttar Pradesh Diabetes Association, which is a co-sponsor for this program. And Dr. Narsingh Verma is also the secretary of the ACP India chapter. And he has various credentials to his name. I would also like to invite Dr. Srinivas Murthy. Dr. Srinivas Murthy is also the advisory council member of the ACP India chapter, and he has been enrolled in many trials on insulin, including those on the oral insulin as well as on the weekly insulin icodec. And I would also like to invite Dr. Swati Srivastav. Dr. Swati Srivastav is the professor and head of professor of the medicine at the SMS Medical College, Jaipur. And she is also the advisory council member for the ACP India chapter. Welcome all the panelists. And today we are going to have a very, very interesting discussion. As we know that we are celebrating 100 years of the insulin. And if it's the journey of the insulin, we can say that this is actually a triumph of the science over a deadly disease. And to begin with, I would like to ask Dr. Narsingh Verma, sir, because he is the senior most and he has seen the journey of the insulin in a wide perspective. So I would like to ask you, sir, how do you see this 100-year journey of the insulin?
Thank you, Amit, for inviting me to this very exciting session. 100 years of insulin have seen so many things. One most important thing I will say that exactly 100 years back in 1921, we were having only one drug for diabetes, that was insulin. Today, we have around 20 drugs exactly after 100 years, but still insulin is there. So, this journey shows us the importance of insulin. The search of drug is on. Never and never drugs are coming. But the control of diabetes is still a mirage. And even insulin has not been able to complete this control of diabetes. So that is the thing with what I find. But here I would like to mention that a lot of change in the quality of life has occurred. If you talk about quality of life in any diabetes patient, then the only drug which improves the quality of life is insulin. No other drug is able to change the quality of life. They can control blood sugar. They can also reduce up to some extent microvascular complications and other complications as well. They can delay it. They can also cause some betterment in the life, but the quality, exact quality of life is possible only by insulin. So that is my take around. Amit, you are muted.
Sir, you have very well highlighted the importance of the insulin in the management of the diabetes. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Swati. Dr. Swati, we know that insulin has gone through a journey in which various types of insulin has been developed, and we have currently available insulins include analogs as well as the human insulin. So there is always a controversy which one is better, where do you use human insulin? So where would you like to still use human insulin and not the analog insulin?
Hello and thank you, Amit, for this question. At the outset, I would like to thank DID also for giving me this forum, as well as the American College of Physicians for giving me this very interesting forum of Insulin Symposium. As Dr. Narsi Verma very well said, that this is the 100th year of the really one of the biggest discoveries of in the science of human medical medicine. And Benting and Best and two Canadian scientists, how they discovered in 1921, and they were immediately recognized because 2 years later they were given a Nobel Prize also for this massive discovery of insulin. And it has, we've seen so many years go by, and Amit, as you said, that initially we had those insulins, we had bovine, then porcine, then we had human insulin, and now we have analogs. And how do you see analogs as against human insulins is your question. When we see that even though the journey of insulin has been so long, we see that the physiological mimicking of insulin is still not there. Because how physiologically we have secretion of insulin post glucose immediately, and the two phases of insulin and the dying off, still presently the insulin which is injected and goes into the systemic circulation, not so much, lesser in the portal system, venous and hepatoportal circulation. Still, we do not have a very much physiological insulin, which when we talk about the initial insulins. So now when we talk about the analogs try to mimic as much as possible amongst all the insulins that we have, the physiological insulin. When we talk about the onset of action, when we talk about the decaying of the action, and the lesser incidence of hypoglycemia, and the lesser weight gain which is associated. So we had set of insulins, then we had short acting insulins, then we had very rapidly acting insulins. We had initially, when we had the conventional human insulins, it was NPH. Then we developed basal insulins, which were a very long acting, and now we have ultra long acting also. And what happens with the ultra long acting insulins is that when we talk about the analogs, as you asked, the analogs, when you have these ultra long acting insulins, or very long acting insulins, then they do not have so much glycemic variability throughout the day. And if they do not have so much glycemic variability, then what we have is a better, entire time and range throughout the day, and a better control. And so we are not landing up with more number of hypoglycemic events. We are not landing up with more number of weight gain, which is associated with it. So when we talk about these insulins, they are mimicking the physiology. At the same time, we have, when we talk about the analogs, we have an better and lesser adverse effects also. And if we talk about the cost, that thing always is there, whether the cost of it is there. But then when we talk about the cost, there is an increased cost if we talk about the MRP. But then we also have to see that the period of absenteeism, the loss of productivity, which occurs because of the adverse effects which occurs with human insulin, probably are very much reduced. So in the long run, I think we are benefiting and we are having better outcomes, lesser complications later on. So I think analogs definitely stand a better chance if you want to compare with human insulin.
You are rightly pointed out the cost remains a concern because the analogs are quite costlier than the human insulins and all. I would like to now ask Dr. Srinivas Murthy a very important question. For the last couple of years, we have been listening and talking about the once weekly insulin. And at the 100 years, we are all waiting that when this once weekly insulin is going to come. And you have an experience of doing the trial at your center with the ICODAC. So what is your, I would like to learn more from you on this once weekly insulin.
Sure, Amit. First of all, it's a privilege to share dais with Dr. Narsingh Verma sir and Dr. Swati and eminent colleagues. Thank you very much for having me here. And I think, Amit, the last century has been innovations in insulin, transforming the lives of people with diabetes. So we all know that before insulin, diabetes was mostly a fatal disease. And we are so thankful that we are born after 1921, that the insulins we have in our hands to treat our patients, we are so lucky. And I would like to quote Dr. Elliot Jocelyn's statement. 40 years after his discovery, he said, in 40 years with insulin and 4,000 years without insulin, today there must be about 3 million people with diabetes having lifespan increased by about plus 10 years. I think that is something in 1960s he quoted. And that's a very, very important statement. I think Dr. Swati's response was ultra long acting. He really covered the topic, 20 minutes, what we usually present, and that she did it, I think, in 4 or 5 minutes. That's really amazing, ma'am. So your question coming to once weekly insulin, I think it was a dream for all of us to have less number of pricks for our patients. I think that has come true now, and phase 2 has clearly given results with efficacy and safety both. Now we have started with the phase 3A, it's called Onwards 4, where it is designed to achieve a longer half-life by changes in the human insulin molecule. Now what they have done is they have used 3 amino acid substitutions, and at the B29, removal of terminal threonine they have done, and they've added on a C20 icosapent fatty diacid. That is why it's called as a icodec. So that is what is done. And this C20 icosapent fatty diacid, what does it do? It does a strong reversible binding to albumin. So the reduced receptor mediated clearance will be there. So these formulations ensure whenever the injection volume is similar, it is 1:1 conversion. I'll tell you the dosage. But after injection, these hexamers slowly dissociate into monomers and bind to the albumin. Although we give once weekly worth insulin, for example, if somebody is on 40 units per day basal insulin, you multiply it by 7. So 7 into 4, that will be the total dose given every week, same day. This is the dosage. And coming to that, the insulin pen for this is 700 units capable. It's 700 units capable of the pen. That is what we try to give, because we need to give 7 into whatever the basal dose. First dose to be given 1.5 times. If somebody's requirement is say 240, you add another 120 units. So you give 360 units at one go under one shot. And that's something which patients, we have just started. I've enrolled about 6 patients now. It's really interesting to see, because we are worried about hypoglycemia. I mean, I'm sure we will discuss in the due course. So this week's worth insulin is administered almost in icodec, and all this is albumin bound initially to form an inactive depot. And this depot becomes small fractions and later on. So the gradual continuous release of the active icodec from this albumin bound inactive depot leads to the prolonged action. And this buffers against dosing variations. And that's what is something important. But the question is, the steady state is achieved after 3 to 4 pricks only. That means initial 3 to 4 weeks, we need to give that 1.5 dosage, what I said. And that's something which is going on now. It's a phase 3, not double blind, it's an open label, 1:1 with insulin glargine and the icodec versus the triple pricks of your NovaRapid. Analog insulins, PID. So basal bolus regimen compared with once weekly, the basal.
I think we are all looking forward for the introduction of this very smart insulin, which we are saying, or the once weekly insulin. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Narsingh Verma, sir. Sir, over the last 15 years, we have seen that there has been introduction of the insulin, and first was introduced in 2005 in the form of Afrezza, and later on it was Vidal. Now we have the inhaled insulin available with us, and though it is not available in India. So why we are not getting this inhaled insulin in India? What is stopping us from getting it to India, and what is the global use of this inhaled insulin, sir?
Thank you, Amit. Very valid question. We are talking about oral insulin, inhaled insulin since very long. In inhaled insulin, there is one problem which is since very beginning. That is regarding the bioavailability. Because insulin in inhaled form has to go to alveoli, and by alveoli, it will be going to the bloodstream. So I think a lot of wastage of insulin will be there, because in the respiratory tract, traveling all through tract and then delivering it to the whole blood system, I think more and more doses are required, and it becomes very costly. So maybe one of the reasons why it is not being popular in India, you know that most of the time in India, most of the patients and most of the doctors prefer those molecules which are economical one. You might have asked that why we are talking today about insulin, but why even the amylin mediators are not being used in India. Not a single company has come with the amylin, but all over the world it is being used. And even you see, even in all medical courses, most of the time from PGs, if I ask what hormones are being secreted by the beta cell, they just stop on insulin. And then I ask any other hormone being secreted by beta cell. They are not answering it. Even our basic books do not have much about amylin. That is because most of our medical education depends upon the industry. When the drug will come, then everybody will know. You might take the example of SGLT2 inhibitors. This renal physiology was known since very beginning, but not taught, nobody was bothering about it. So inhaled insulins are not popular and are not coming to India. Maybe they are very, very costly. And most of the time you will find it difficult for the Indian population to have it. That may be one of the reasons.
Sir, I totally agree with you. And as you have said that, sir, there is a drastic change in the way the research happens. If you look at the discovery of the insulin was not discovered by a pharma company. It was discovered by Dr. Banting and the Bast, and one of them was an orthopedic surgeon. So it was not the pharmaceutical company who discovered the insulin. And for the sake of the mankind, they handed over the patent to the Canadian Institute only for $1. So this was the commitment to the research, and this was what happened 30 years ago. And today, you have rightly said, the research has become such a costly affair that I don't think it is possible for any of the doctor to do such a kind of research and get involved into it. And you have rightly said that now there is a dominance. So this platform is very important, where Dialogues in Diabetes, where we don't talk about sponsors. We speak our heart out, what we feel, and we totally talk about the science only. And it is not molecule-centric, it is not centric. Still, I would like to ask Dr. Swati that there is a lot of inertia when we start our patients on insulin. So if at all you have a chance to use inhaled insulin, so what subset of patient will you be using this inhaled insulin?
Yes, Dr. Amit, as Dr. Narsi Verma sir very rightly pointed out, that inhaled insulin is a very important type of insulin, but it has so many various problems that can arise because of it, and probably that's the reason it's not that popular amongst the marketing also, and it was probably never marketed well enough. And in India, or we do not see it at all being popular. When we talk about inhaled insulin, I think it's the very much plus point it has is that there is the alveolar, it has such a large surface area for absorption, and relatively ease of administration is one thing that goes in favor. So in a patient where I would, your question is, where would I like? So if the patient is a very reluctant patient, if I have an option of inhaled insulin, and it's a very reluctant patient who needs a small dose of insulin, because as Dr. Narsi Verma very correctly said, that the dose required would be quite a lot. And so the device would be very heavy, and it would not be that comfortable and easy to administer. Plus, we do not have much idea how much bioavailability may occur, because the absorption may not be that consistent and that predictable. So these are some points which go against it. So if I really want to give, and if I have the option of inhaled insulin, I would give it in a person who has, number one, a good respiratory function, because if the respiratory function is impaired, like in COPD patients, in bronchial asthma patients, and smokers, in smokers, the absorption is increased. So if there are smokers, the COPD patients, we don't know what is going to get absorbed or at all, then we cannot give. And also in these inhaled insulins, in the trials which were done and wherever it was used, it was associated with some amount of cough also. So cough and all these problems, they should not be there. The patient should be on a smaller dose, and then we can think of this inhaled insulin. It is definitely a promising entity. Let's see.
Amit, can I add on, Amit?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I had an experience with a buccal oral insulin. It was like a spray where you're supposed to go spray to the buccal mucosa. And as Dr. Narsi Verma sir was talking about the bioavailability and the dosage, if somebody was on 20 units, you multiply it by 10 times. So 200 units were supposed to be inhaled. You can imagine the cost implications in that. So if the total requirement is 20, then you are supposed to take 200 units in the buccal delivery. Of course, that didn't click. I think it because of the small surface area of absorption, the lower permeability, the taste buds, the food they taste, and if they eat hot and very cold, then the absorption can interfere. That is why it was shelved, because it is not very practical.
Dr. Murthy, at the same breath, now I think it is time to ask you that what is stopping the introduction of the oral insulin? Why it has not seen the light of the day till now? 100 years of research, so much of the things, and many people will say it is the pharma insulin companies which will not allow. But as you have seen with the GLP-1, the same pharma companies have come with the oral preparation also. So it is not the that thing, but what is precluding the introduction of this oral insulin?
I think it will definitely happen, Amit. It's a matter of time, because now if you see oral sema, I'm doing again another CVOT trial called SOUL, which is very well tolerated, very well absorbed, all that. Of course, there is a catch there where we have to give in empty stomach, and up to 1 hour after you take the tablet, nothing else to be taken, and 120 ml of water we need to measure and take, all that. But the oral insulin so far, which have done, are all formulated in the tablet forms. Ultra long acting basal was there. One, it was called as, I think, 338 was the molecule's name, and it enhanced proteolytic activity by absorption enhancer was used. And even in SEMA, there is used something called as a snack, which is going to bypass your stomach pH. So they've already achieved in GLP-1. I'm sure it will come to the insulin aspect also. And one more was there, I think 801, which was called the oral formulation. Again, it was a human insulin, which is oil-based technology with a trypsin inhibitor, and a chelator was used. And this insulin-containing capsule was designed to bypass the stomach to release the insulin in the upper GI. That is what is, and it was supposed to be in the evening dosage after food. And they were tried in type 1, type 2, NASH, all that. But again, it didn't come after phase 2 because of the bioavailability issue. And we did recently, that is about 3 years back, insulin tregopil was one of the very promising molecule, but it was given as a 4 times a day. And this was, insulin tregopil was one of the Bangalore-based pharma only did it. I don't know if I can take the names, but I don't want to take the names. So this insulin chemically modified with a short chain ethylene diglycol oligomer. What this oligomer moiety was intended to was increase the solubility, the oligomer, and enhance the stability so that the enzymatic degradation of the stomach is escaped. So it facilitates in the, again, upper GI, it absorbs. So it's a very, very promising molecule, tregopil. And 4 times a day, we did a phase 2B, and it did not show the PKPD what was expected, because the placebo arm, this arm, both did not show the efficacy. It was well tolerated, but the efficacy was not above the placebo arm. So that's what they submitted to DCGI. I think it's 3 years now. They said they will come out with the phase 3, but they did not come out because I think DCGI has not given approval because of the efficacy issue, not for the tolerance issue. So this is where the oral pills stand today.
Very well highlighted. At the same time, sir, when we are talking about the latest advances and what is going to happen in the future, it is important to look back at the past as well. And I would like to ask Narsingh Verma, sir, I think because he has used all kinds of insulin throughout his career, and we are the one who has been seeing mostly the newer insulins. Sir, where do you still use premix insulin in your practice? And how do you decide that, how do you choose your patients for the premix insulin? What is the current place in therapy, sir?
Very rightly asked, Amit. Premix insulin have less users nowadays because of the supremacy of the designer insulins. But we still use premix insulin in the subset of population where the especially hospitalized one in beginning, and short-term use, and also where the patients are very poor and they cannot afford the newer designer insulin, which are little bit costly, not very costly nowadays, but still costly. And also I'm using them in the pregnancy. So these are 4 or 5 subsets where I still prefer use premix insulins, but analogs not. But as the time has come, you can say only 10% premix insulin nowadays I'm using. Most of the time using the analogs, because now even the cost difference has gone. And considering the supremacy of the designer insulins, it is being preferred over the premix.
Very well said, sir. Now, sir, I would like to ask a very, very important question to all the panelists. Recently, there is an U500 regular insulin is available in the US, though it is not available in India now. And Degludec U200 is also being launched in the US. And we already have Glargine 300. So these highly concentrated forms of the insulin. So what are the subsets of the patient where would you like to use these kind of insulins?
If you ask personally, then these insulins I will prefer to those subsets where the high doses of insulin were required. To my understanding, even the drugs are being indicated to most of the patients, but I still prefer where the large doses were required, then this concentrated form of insulin will be better. When you compare Glargine and U300, they say that nocturnal hypoglycemia is less. But that difference is not very pronounced. Theoretically, you can say the difference is there. So I'm still happy with the basal insulins, not 100, U100, not going to U300 to all patients. But where the dose requirement is more, then definitely U300, 200 and 500 may be required.
Yeah, true, Amit. I think Narasimha Verma sir rightly said the basic consideration we think is whenever the dosage requirement is high. But the Glargine U300 claim that it is more flatter, more longer, and having less nocturnal hypoglycemia versus Degludec. That was a add-on studies which they have done and shown. But clinically, how much is this statistically insignificant numbers translate is a big question for all of us, because in trials it's a different setting. But when it comes to the clinical practice, the small amount of reduction in that nocturnal hypoglycemia, because most of our patients having 8+ HbA1c. I mean, we don't see 6+ HbA1c in our routine practice.
Yeah, I will like to say one thing more.
Sir.
A good number of my patients who are having the renally compromised patients, having DKD, I'm still using Glargine in very less doses. I'm utilizing this dumping of insulin. And you will not believe that 4 unit, 6 unit, 8 unit insulin I'm using since last 10, 15 years. And they're very well controlled. But I have found that the DKD patients, when insulin is given, their life is prolonged and progression of disease goes down. So even U100 is doing better. So in the beginning, it was talked that in renally compromised patient, we should not use long-acting insulin. But since very beginning, I'm using them. And now everybody is accepting that even in DKD patients, they can be used safely.
Swati, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I very much agree with both the other panelists what they said about it, that because it is very, very concentrated, you need to require some insulins like Humulin 500. It's just 20% of the volume. So a person who requires a very large quantity of insulin would very much benefit by these concentrated. Humulin 500 IU is not available in India, but it's available globally. Another point is that when we change the concentration of insulins with some insulins, when they become more concentrated, the pharmacokinetics and dynamics remain the same. But with some insulins, the pharmacokinetics and dynamics also change. So that is what we have to keep in mind. For example, this Humulin 500 IU, which we are talking about, that covers, we cannot add it with any other insulin. So you cannot add a basal insulin also with that. So we either give 2 shots or 3 shots in a day as required, and it acts as both basal as well as bolus. So basically where this was even suggested there, that where you want to reduce the number of pricks in a patient also, these insulins become better. And as Dr. Murthy very rightly pointed out, that they have lesser variability, especially when you talk about Glargine U100 and 300. The variability, the glycemic variability is lesser because of the much longer action, which increases up to 36 as action occurs. So again, this becomes a very favorable point.
Yes, you rightly pointed out, Dr. Swati. I think one of the area where we U500 can find a use is brittle diabetes, where the insulin requirements are very high, and the patient is having extremely high insulin resistance. In those cases, I think U500 can be of some value, though risk of hypoglycemia will also be very high when you are using such high doses. So now, since we are nearing our time, I would like to take one brief comment from all the 3 panelists, that where would you see the next 100 years when it comes to insulin therapy?
If you ask to me, next 100 years, I think what Dr. Murthy was telling us, we will like to have oral insulin. And I'm very sure it looks to me that within 5 years, we will have oral insulin. And once oral insulin will come, all the insulin baiters will be flattened. They will accept insulin. All those who say that insulin is not the only answer, let the oral insulin come, then it will be the king. And what Dr. Swati was talking very correctly, that insulin advancement have come its way, but the physiological insulin is still emerged. Because when we give insulin from outside, the liver is last to get it. While the insulin secreted in the body, liver is the king. He receives it and then distributes accordingly. That is why the liver benefit are not there with the external insulin. So I think in 100 years, next 100 years, definitely insulin will be the king and most physiological insulin will come.
Yes, sir, you have rightly said. And already there are researches which is happening on hepatic-directed vesicle insulin, HDLV. So I think they will also see some light of the day. Dr. Srinivas Murthy, your comments, sir.
Oh, I would love to see insulin preparation that can auto-adjust its biological activity as per your blood glucose. That is what years. You just have to put a patch, just like you put your sensors for CGM, with a small micro needle. And there is a French company which has started once yearly GLP-1. Just for your information, phase 2 trials have already started once yearly. It's a subcutaneous. Of course, you need to do a little procedure, insert it in the abdominal wall, and it will take care of your GLP secretion for 1 whole year, just like how GLP-1 was invented, in the animal. So that is what people are looking at. So I would love to have an insulin where you just have to put a patch and it takes care, it checks on its own, hypo, hyper, all that, and it mimics, as Narsingh Verma said, wanted a physiology, just like our normal human secretion, and that will mimic, and it will 200% happen in next 20 years, and that is, take it from me, Amit.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy. I would just like to add one small comment to that. There are trials which are going on once a month insulin also. So
yeah, that is there. That is there.
Having once a month may also be a reality in the future. Dr.
Yes.
Swati, your comment, please.
Yeah, very true. Dr. Murthy very rightly pointed out, because there are things where, when depending on the glucose level, if the glucose level goes up, then the particular that thing gets dissolved and secretes the insulin. So this technology is now very much is being studied, and probably coming up, say 50-20 years we may get. And what you were saying about hepatic directed vesicles insulin, that is, I think, again a very important technology which we are somewhat using in subcutaneous also and for oral form also, where there will be an increase, it will directly go to the liver, and hence the portal hepatic portal system will be having a higher concentration of insulin and much better response to high glucose in the form of glucose uptake by the liver. Because currently what happens, the muscle uptake increases, but the hepatic uptake does not occur so well as it should. And what happens is systemic hyperinsulinemia leading to insulin resistance goes up. In addition to this, Amit, one point which I would like to add is we are going to have this hepatic directed vesicles probably coming over a few years. We are going to have oral insulins, yes, the patch and all those things. But what about the stability of insulin? That is one thing which always keeps in my mind, because still there are a lot of developing nations who do not have refrigeration and a good cold chain maintenance facilities. So I hope that in future probably we have ultra stable insulins also, which are not degraded with the temperatures as easily as the current ones. And so we can cater to our populations living in the developing countries. That is one point which I really think research should be done, work should be done.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. I think even a whole one day is not enough to discuss the journey of the insulin and the future of the insulin. Now, I would like to hand over the session to our respected chairpersons so that they can make their comments and they can put their questions also.
Dr. Amit, I think, Dr. I think it was a wonderful session, the journey of insulin 100 years. And this DID is a very interesting platform where there is no PowerPoint presentation, right? And we just discuss dialogues in diabetes, and a lot of take-home messages actually are there. And in this particular session, regarding insulin. One thing, Dr. Amit, I want to point out regarding A1C, because I was just hearing Dr. Jyoti Dev's lecture 2 days back regarding the HbA1c, because previous session is also giving emphasis of how HbA1c is important nowadays. And as Dr. Swati has pointed out, the time in range is more important, because it's the glycemic variability is important than what the HbA1c comes out, right? The HbA1c maybe, there are a lot of issue with HbA1c, a lot of fallacies are there in the calculation and all that stuff. But in time in range is more important. Like if the time in range is more than 70%, I think more of patients would get benefited. Regarding insulin, I think most of the patients are on insulin ask you actually when oral insulins are coming up and what are the hindrances are coming up, because they're fed up of insulin, though their blood glucose are absolutely controlled, but still taking insulin 3 or 4 times a day, it is just a very frustrating part on the patient's end. So we are all just waiting for the oral Dr. Murthy. We would see our hope of light comes when oral insulins are available. I think it's a wonderful session. I compliment Dr. Narsingh Verma is very happy to see you, and very crisp remarks, Dr. Verma, Dr. Murthy and Dr. Swati were excellent, and Dr. Amit, as usual, you are a great moderator.
Dr. Ghanshyam, your comments.
Yes, 2 comments, sir. Dr. Amit, it was a wonderful session. We get to know a lot of designer insulins and a lot of monthly as well as yearly insulin and analog. But ours is a poor country. Affordability is a big issue. And I don't know, I think maybe 30-40% or maybe 50% of the population are not even able to get a regular or a NPH insulin. So I can see a lot of RSDI faculty here, a lot of ACP, India chapter is here, we have API members here. I will request everyone to write to maybe a government to make it affordable, maybe a regular insulin and NPH. I have heard that IDF Europe is already doing an activity for next 3 years on this centenary celebration, so that poor patients are given this insulin at an affordable rate by the government. So I will request everyone, designer insulin, all research keeps on going, but we should take care of the population, 60-70 million of diabetes. We should take care of them, and we are individually working very hard to control the sugars and care of diabetes patient. But as an association, we should also care of the larger population. So I will just request all these members, senior diabetologists, to take care of those poor patients also. Thank you.
Dr. Ghanshyam. Now I will request Dr. Ashok to have his remark.
Thank you, Dr. Amit. Am I audible to all of you? Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Ashok.
Yeah. This is a wonderful session by eminent panelists and great moderation by Dr. Amit. We have a lot of discussion, one by one, all discussion regarding discovery of older insulin, newer insulin, oral insulin, all insulin has been discussed. And it is very great that DID has this topic in view of 100-year celebration of discovery of insulin. Very great by the work by panelists as well as moderator Dr. Amit Gupta. I thanks all of you, and I also thanks DID for having this session. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Now it's I will hand over the session again to Dr. Payal.
Thank you, Amit. We should thank you for moderating, Dr. Swati, and honored to be with Dr. Narsingh Verma, sir.
So it has been a very productive and rewarding discussion, which touched upon all the important aspects of the glorious journey of insulin. I thank all the dignitaries of this session